Look at the world around you, the city you live in, the language you speak, the wars that were fought and the ones that were not, the technology in your pocket, the freedoms you exercise. We are taught that history is a river, flowing inevitably towards the sea. But the river is not a river. Welcome to the divergence point. The investigation begins now. The light from the display washes over the room in rhythmic, cool pulses. The narrator stands before a vast, flickering digital map of the ancient Mediterranean, his fingers tracing the coastlines as they shift in real time. He taps a node, and the image zooms, centering on the 7 hills of Rome. The map jitters, the data streams glitching for a heartbeat before settling into a sharp, static projection of the city grid. He locks the interface onto a single, glowing coordinate. March 15th, 44 BC. He steps closer, the blue light reflecting in his eyes as he highlights the date. It is a point etched into the bedrock of human record, a singular coordinate where the trajectory of the Republic fractured. He drags his hand across the timeline, watching the centuries ripple outward from that specific day. The map shows the world as it was, and then, with a subtle shift in the light, it begins to show the world as it could have been. He pauses, his hand hovering over the Senate floor, the digital dust motes dancing in the air between his fingertips and the past. The weight of the moment hangs in the room, a silent pressure against the screen. The narrator pulls his hand away, and the map dims, leaving only the glowing date suspended in the dark. He turns to face the lens, his expression unreadable. Was this day a fixed point? He asks. A preordained destination written into the laws of time. He gestures to the empty space behind him, where the ghosts of the Senate once stood. Or was it a simple choice? A single human action that could have been undone by a different step, a different word, or a moment of hesitation? He walks toward the edge of the light, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He is not just looking at a date, but at the fragility of every outcome we take for granted. If the end of the Republic was a hinge on which history turned, then every person involved was a hand placed upon that hinge. He leans in, narrowing the distance. If we treat the past as a collection of inevitable events, we ignore the reality of human agency. But if we see history as a series of fragile decisions, the entire map changes. He pauses, letting the question hang in the air, challenging the viewer to look past the textbooks and into the chaotic, unwritten possibilities that lie beneath the surface of the established record. The blue light of the digital map fades, replaced by the warm, amber glow of a desk lamp. The setting shifts to a secluded archive, where the air is heavy with the scent of aging paper and floor-to-ceiling shelves. Dr. Aria Vance sits at a scarred mahogany table, the silence broken only by the rhythmic scrape of a chair on stone. She pulls a weathered copy of Suetonius from a stack, the spine creaking as she lays it flat. She does not look up. Her focus is absolute, her fingers tracing the faded ink of the Latin text as she searches for the man behind the monument. She turns a page, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Myth has painted Caesar as an unstoppable force, a titan of destiny. But Vance is here to strip that veneer away. She taps her pen against the margin, noting a discrepancy in the record. She is looking for the cracks in the legend, the moments where the weight of the world pressed down on a single individual. She pushes the book forward, her eyes scanning the lines with a precise, clinical intensity. The investigation begins here, not with grand theories, but with the cold, hard reality of the primary sources. Vance stops on a passage, her finger hovering over the Latin text. She leans closer, her eyes scanning the descriptions of Caesar's final months. The image of the triumphant leader dissolves under her scrutiny, replaced by a man struggling to hold his own body together. She points to a marginal note detailing the sudden, violent seizures, the epilepsy that left him gasping for breath on the floor of his private quarters. She notes the persistent, bone-deep exhaustion that haunted his waking hours, the kind of fatigue that makes even the simplest decision feel like a mountain to climb. He was not a god, she observes, but a man running on depleted reserves. She traces the lines documenting his recurring nightmares, the erratic behavior that signaled a mind pushed to its absolute limit. Had he simply remained within the safety of his home that morning, the entire conspiracy would have collapsed. The plotters needed him exposed, vulnerable, and moving. By staying behind closed doors, Caesar would have rendered their blades useless, forcing the conspirators to face the reality of their own betrayal in an empty hall. Vance looks up, her expression hardening. The most powerful man in the world was brittle, and that single human fragility was the one variable the history books chose to ignore. The focus narrows from the public man to the private terror of his household. Vance shifts a different manuscript toward the light, detailing the accounts of Calpurnia. Her nights were not restful. They were dominated by visions of a falling house and the sight of her husband bleeding in her own arms. These were not mere dreams, but recurring, violent premonitions that left her pacing the marble halls long before the sun touched the horizon. Every morning became a battlefield of will. She clung to his hand, her knuckles white, pleading for him to remain in the safety of their sanctuary. She did not speak of omens or superstition, but of a cold, inescapable certainty. The tension in the villa was thick enough to choke the air. Caesar stood between two worlds, the duty that demanded his presence at the Senate and the desperate entreaties of a wife who saw his end before it arrived. He would have heard the echoes of her warnings in every corridor. The domestic pressure was a weight, a constant, abrasive friction against his resolve. He stood at the threshold, his hand resting on the heavy wooden door, caught in the final silence before the storm. Outside, the city waited, unaware that the entire future of the Republic hinged on whether he chose to listen to her or to his own ambition. Vance closes the volume and leans back, the gravity of the alternative reality taking hold. She argues that the assassination was not an inevitable historical anchor, but a gamble that relied entirely on Caesar stepping into the public eye. Had he stayed home, the conspiracy would have crumbled under the weight of its own exposed secrets. The plotters were not a unified force. They were a nervous, fragmented group, held together only by the singular goal of reaching him. Without the act itself, the tension among the conspirators would have turned inward. They would have spent hours in the empty Senate, pacing the stone floor, their nerves fraying as the minutes turned into an agonizing wait. They needed him to arrive to validate their treason. Without his presence, their motive would have evaporated, leaving them as common criminals waiting in a room that held no power. Vance traces a finger over the map, emphasizing that history hinges on these fragile human choices. If Caesar had chosen the quiet of his study over the call of the Senate, the Republic would have been forced to survive him rather than suffer his murder. The entire momentum of the event depended on his movement, and by staying put, he would have effectively dismantled the engine of his own demise. It is a pivot point that renders the entire tragedy optional. The narrative shifts to the interior of the Senate. The air is stagnant, heavy with the scent of old stone and rising dust. Light filters through the high apertures, casting long, sharp shadows across the floor where the benches sit vacant. The conspirators stand in the periphery, huddled in small, uneasy groups. They do not speak. They move with jerky, unnatural motions, their hands hovering near their sides. Every few seconds, one man glances toward the entrance, his pulse visible in the frantic rhythm of his throat. A distant sound echoes from the hallway, a sharp metallic scrape, and the entire room freezes. Every head snaps toward the doorway. A man steps into the light, but it is not him. The conspirators exhale in a ragged, collective sigh. The weight of the silence returns, thicker than before. They adjust their positions, shifting their weight from foot to foot, the stone floor cold beneath them. The dread is no longer a concept, it is a physical presence in the room, pressing against their ribs. They look at each other, their eyes darting, searching for a sign of courage that has long since vanished. The minutes are no longer measured by time, but by the mounting, suffocating realization that the target is not coming. The trap is set, but the hall remains empty, and the silence begins to scream. The facade of righteous rebellion is crumbling. One man pulls his hand away from his side, his fingers shaking uncontrollably. He looks at his colleagues, but he no longer sees patriots. He sees men with pale faces, sweating despite the chill of the hall. The silence of the Senate is no longer a tactical advantage. It is a mirror reflecting their own insignificance. They are trapped in a vacuum of their own making. One conspirator takes a step toward the exit, his resolve fractured, but a heavy hand clamps onto his shoulder. They are bound together now, not by a grand cause, but by the shared, terrifying reality of their situation. The realization hits them with the force of a physical blow. They are not architects of a new republic. They are merely common traitors, standing in the dust, waiting for a man who has rendered them obsolete by simply staying away. Suspicion begins to curdle the air. They glance at the daggers they carry, the very steel that was meant to forge their legacy, now feeling like dead weight. Their eyes lock, searching for blame, for a scapegoat, for any reason why their world is turning to ash. The grand design has failed, and in the hollow space of the Senate, the only thing remaining is the cold, sharp truth of their failure. The pressure inside the chamber snaps. One conspirator turns on another, his voice a jagged whisper that cuts through the stagnant air. He accuses his peer of cowardice, his finger jabbing at the air. The argument erupts, not into a debate on policy, but into a desperate scramble to find a target for their collective failure. In the middle of the shouting, a roll of parchment slips from a trembling hand, hitting the stone floor with a sharp, hollow sound. It unrolls, exposing a list of names, a ledger of their intent. The heavy doors at the far end of the hall groan as they begin to swing open. The conspirators freeze, the argument dying in their throats. They scramble for the document, but it is too late. The heavy thud of boots echoes from the corridor, rhythmic and purposeful. Their identities, once hidden behind shadows, are now written on the floor for anyone to read. The panic is absolute. They scatter toward the exits, knocking over benches and tripping over their own feet in a frantic, uncoordinated flight. The Senate floor, once a stage for their grand ambition, is now a scene of debris and discarded secrets. They are no longer a unified threat. They are a collection of hunted men, their reputations shattered by the sudden, brutal exposure of their own handiwork. The panic recedes as the gates lock behind the fleeing men. What remains in the Senate is not a void, but a foundation. Prof. Thorne points to the empty benches where the most violent agitators once sat. They have vanished, leaving behind a chamber cleared of its most volatile obstacles. The air in the hall shifts from the sharp metallic tang of impending violence to the steady, dust-filled stillness of bureaucracy. Those who remain are not soldiers or conspirators, but legislators. They begin the work of clearing the broken benches and scattered scrolls, their movements precise and devoid of the frenzy that defined the previous hour. The threat of civil war, which had loomed like a storm front, evaporates. There is no call to arms, no rallying of legions, no march on the provinces. Instead, there is the scratching of quills on parchment. A quiet, terrifyingly efficient stability takes hold. The Senate resumes its session, not to debate the merits of a coup, but to address the immediate needs of the city. The shock of the event acts as a catalyst, forcing the remaining members to govern with a sudden pragmatic necessity. The crisis is over, replaced by a cold, functional order that no one in the room had dared to imagine only moments before. With the radicals gone, the Senate floor becomes a place of quiet, methodical dismantling. Prof. Thorne leans over his desk, tracing a line on the map. He notes that the office of dictator was never intended to be a permanent fixture, but a temporary emergency measure. Now, with the emergency resolved by the failure of the coup, the justification for absolute power vanishes. The audience sees the transition. Caesar does not fight the change. He releases the grip. He walks to the center of the hall and formally resigns the title, his voice echoing off the marble. The quill scratches across the official scrolls, striking the word dictator from the state records. It is a quiet, administrative death of an era. The cult of personality that had centered on one man dissolves into the collective body of the Senate. Power, once concentrated in a single pair of hands, is now distributed back into the diverse, federated provinces. The members begin to organize, not as subjects to a singular leader, but as representatives of a shared, resilient structure. The weight of the republic shifts from the singular will of a commander to the consensus of the governing body. It is the birth of a system designed to outlive any individual. The restructuring begins not with a grand decree, but with a series of quiet, procedural adjustments. Prof. Thorne points to the regional map, highlighting how the power vacuum is filled by local representative councils rather than military governors. In this timeline, the Senate acts as a clearinghouse for regional interests, balancing the needs of the grain-rich Nile Valley with the mineral wealth of the Iberian mines. Every province now sends an envoy to Rome, not as a hostage, but as a negotiator. The city itself changes. The grand, imposing forums are repurposed into spaces for public debate and audit. Accountants and clerks replace the legions on the administrative front lines. Decisions are reached through consensus, requiring a slow, deliberate process of polling and compromise. It is a grueling, unglamorous form of politics that demands constant participation from the citizenry. The audience observes the shift in the streets. The presence of armed guards diminishes, replaced by local magistrates who walk the markets without escorts. The logic of the state is no longer survival, but sustainability. By embedding the legislative process into the daily life of every province, the Senate ensures that no single individual can ever again claim the authority to dismantle the collective will. The Republic is no longer a fragile experiment. It is a rigid, federated engine of governance. Dr. Aria Vance shifts her focus to the scrolls stacked on her archive table, pulling a fragmented text toward the light. She argues that the trajectory of faith changed the moment the state stopped seeking a singular, unifying doctrine. Without a Constantine to enforce a central creed, Christianity never hardened into a rigid, monolithic institution. Instead, it remained a fluid, localized movement, branching into thousands of distinct schools of thought. The audience sees the results in the visual record. Small, independent house churches appearing in every province, each interpreting the Gospels through the lens of local tradition. There is no imperial decree to mandate uniformity. There are no councils called to purge dissenters. Instead, the faith mirrors the federated nature of the Republic itself. Every city maintains its own unique rituals, coexisting with ancient, pre-existing customs that never faced the threat of erasure. A shrine to a local saint might stand directly across the plaza from an older altar dedicated to a Roman deity. No single figure holds the keys to the spiritual life of the populace. This diversity creates a landscape of constant, quiet, intellectual exchange. The movement grows not through state-sponsored expansion, but through the organic, grassroots spread of ideas that vary from one region to the next. forever refusing to consolidate under a single, central authority. The montage unfolds as a tapestry of deliberate, peaceful divergence. In a single, bustling harbor, travelers step off a vessel and bow toward a sun-drenched altar, while nearby, a group gathers in an open garden to recite texts that bear no resemblance to the official creeds of the modern era. There is no tension in these interactions. A merchant offers incense at a communal stone pillar, then turns to discuss philosophy with a scholar who follows a completely different path of devotion. The architecture reflects this reality. Temples, halls, and open-air forums share the same city block, their designs woven together by shared aesthetic standards rather than competing dogmas. A modern viewer watching this footage might expect a confrontation, a struggle for dominance, or a mandate for conversion. It never comes. The camera tracks a street procession where participants carry symbols from a dozen different origins, weaving them into a single, synchronized march. This is a society where the absence of state-sanctioned truth has not led to chaos, but to a vibrant, pluralistic stability. The lack of a central, enforced doctrine has forced every school of thought to rely on persuasion and community utility to survive. It is a world where the search for meaning is a local, personal project, leaving the urban landscape as a living, breathing mosaic of human history, constantly evolving without the shadow of institutional conflict. The stability of the Republic provided more than just social harmony. It created an environment where intellectual capital was never squandered on survival. The narrator walks toward a glass case, his finger tracing the lines of a bronze model. He points to the work of Hero of Alexandria. In our history, his steam engine remained a parlor trick, a spinning curiosity destined to be forgotten in the wake of societal collapse. But in this timeline, the continuity of the Roman state allowed for a different outcome. The device was not discarded. It was studied. It was replicated. It was refined. The camera zooms in on a workshop floor where a scaled-up version of the Aeolipile sits, its copper pipes hissing as they drive a series of interlocking gears. This is the seed of an industrial revolution that never faced the interruption of the Dark Ages. Engineers in this era did not view the power of steam as a mechanical toy, but as a practical solution to the labor demands of a growing global republic. They spent centuries perfecting the seals, the boiler pressures, and the torque ratios. By the time the modern era arrived, the technology was already woven into the fabric of daily life, transforming the movement of goods and the efficiency of public works. The machine is humming, and for the first time, it is doing real, measurable work. The momentum of this early industrial shift became a self-sustaining cycle. Because the Roman administrative structure remained intact, the demand for standardized infrastructure drove rapid technological diffusion. Engineers did not work in isolation. A breakthrough in boiler efficiency in Alexandria was transmitted via the imperial courier network, reaching workshops in Londinium or Carthage within weeks. This network acted as a nervous system for innovation. The narrator points to a series of blueprints spread across a marble drafting table, showing the evolution of piston design over 3 consecutive centuries. Each iteration displays a clear, logical progression, unburdened by the loss of libraries or the breakdown of trade routes. The reliance on manual labor withered as these steam-driven systems assumed the burden of heavy lifting. Aqueducts were no longer just conduits for water. They became the foundations for pressurized steam lines that powered public grain mills and brick-firing kilns. This was not a sudden explosion of invention, but a methodical, unrelenting refinement of classical principles. By maintaining a constant, predictable investment in the sciences, the Republic ensured that no discovery was ever lost to memory. The environment became a feedback loop, where each new machine made the production of the next one cheaper, faster, and more precise. Innovation had become the primary export of the state. The landscape of this republic reflects the marriage of classical permanence and industrial vigor. The narrator stands on a balcony, overlooking a sprawling metropolis where the horizon is defined by the familiar geometry of white marble columns. Yet, these structures are not relics of a static past. They are the scaffolding for a living, breathing machine. Steam rises in controlled plumes from hidden conduits beneath the forum, powering the rhythmic pulse of the city. He points to an atrium where a massive, brass-gilded lift glides silently upward, guided by polished tracks fixed to ancient stone. This is not a city of ruins, but a city of optimized engineering. Every street corner features public water fountains that double as thermal exchange points for the district heating systems. The architecture maintains its structural integrity and aesthetic grace, yet it serves as the backbone for high-pressure steam lines and complex gear-driven public transport. The contrast is breathtaking. Sunlight catches the polished surfaces of glass towers that rise alongside temple pediments, signaling a society that never felt the need to destroy what came before in order to build what comes next. The streets are paved in basalt, vibrating with the quiet hum of buried pistons beneath the surface. It is a world where the power of the modern age is contained within the enduring beauty of the classical ideal. The most profound difference in this timeline is the silence where the Dark Ages should have been. There was no collapse. There was no retreat into superstition or the burning of scrolls. The narrator walks through a vast, climate-controlled archive where the papyrus of the ancient world has been meticulously transcribed onto durable, high-density metallic plates. This repository is not a stagnant museum. It is a living workspace. Scholars work in shifts, building upon the foundations laid by Archimedes and Hero, with no interruption of the intellectual lineage. Because the state never fractured, the central authority maintained the integrity of the great libraries, ensuring that the study of anatomy, optics, and celestial mechanics remained a shared pursuit. He opens a medical ledger that documents 15 centuries of continuous clinical observation. In our world, this knowledge was lost for a millennium. Here, it was refined into a sophisticated understanding of hygiene and surgery that emerged centuries ahead of schedule. The result is a society that views the past not as a series of forgotten secrets, but as a ladder of accumulated truth. There is no concept of a lost era. Instead, the history of this civilization is a singular, accelerating trajectory. The intellectual density of this republic dwarfs our own, as every generation stood on the shoulders of the one before, without ever having to climb out of the ruins of their own making. Professor Thorne gestures toward a glowing interface displaying trade routes that stretch from the Atlantic to the edge of the Orient. He explains that the survival of the Republic necessitated a common language for governance, and Latin became the bedrock of this global administration. It is not merely a language of scholars or liturgy. It is the living, evolving tongue of the marketplace and the laboratory. Every contract, every scientific paper, and every civil decree is drafted in the same, precise, standardized script. Because of this linguistic unity, a merchant in the eastern provinces can read a maritime regulation issued in Rome and understand its terms instantly. There is no barrier of translation to impede the flow of goods or ideas. Thorne demonstrates this by pulling up a live feed from an engineering hub in the southern provinces, where technicians are collaborating with researchers in the capital on a complex hydraulic project. They speak in the same technical terminology, sharing blueprints and calculations without ambiguity. This shared vocabulary has compressed the world, allowing for a level of scientific exchange that relies on total clarity. By eliminating the confusion of disparate dialects and the friction of linguistic boundaries, the Republic has fostered a borderless intellectual community. It is a society where the ease of communication has accelerated the pace of discovery, proving that a single, unified tongue is the most potent tool for sustaining a global civilization. The narrative turns toward the Western Hemisphere, where the timeline fractures away from our own history of conquest. Prof. Thorne activates the display, showing the Atlantic not as a barrier to be crossed by force, but as a highway for diplomatic exchange. In this reality, the initial contact between the Republic and the Americas was defined by trade missions and the establishment of mutual embassies rather than the sword. The ships that crossed the ocean carried diplomats, architects, and agricultural experts tasked with integrating the continent into the administrative framework of the Republic. Instead of the destruction of local structures, the Republic prioritized the incorporation of existing urban centers as new provinces. The narrator describes the arrival of a delegation in a coastal city, where local leaders greeted the Roman envoys not as invaders, but as partners in a global network. This approach allowed for the exchange of botanical knowledge and engineering techniques without the devastation of a colonial war. The Americas were not drained of resources. They were cultivated as essential pillars of the global economy. By treating the continent as a series of federated regions, the Republic ensured that the integration was sustainable, productive, and entirely voluntary. This diplomatic expansion transformed the Western Hemisphere into a vibrant, modern heart of the global state, proving that the reach of civilization does not require the presence of violence. The map pulls back, revealing a world bathed in the soft light of a singular, stable order. Prof. Thorne highlights the core of this success, a legal architecture that provides absolute stability while permitting immense cultural variety. Across the provinces, from the Mediterranean basin to the far reaches of the integrated Americas, the same Roman statutes govern the rights of the individual, yet the expression of daily life remains distinct. The narrator zooms into a bustling public square where a local festival proceeds. Participants celebrate their heritage through music and ritual, yet they operate within a framework of standardized civil protections that ensure peace. This is the triumph of the model. The law does not erase identity. It creates the safe harbor where identity can flourish without the fear of conflict. The screen displays a grid of life, showing millions of citizens moving through their days, linked by a shared devotion to the Republic, but defined by their unique regional traditions. It is a staggering image of harmony. The scale of this achievement is difficult to process, as it presents a civilization that has outgrown the need for internal strife. As the data points pulse in unison across the globe, the viewer observes a society that has finally achieved the long-sought balance between total unity and the preservation of the individual spirit. It is a masterpiece of political engineering, functioning with the precision of a clock and the warmth of a thriving, diverse community. The map fades, replaced by the sharp, crystalline clarity of a living city. The narrator steps into a plaza where the past and future collide. Massive columns of white, veined marble rise hundreds of feet, serving as the structural spine for soaring towers of transparent glass and steel. This is not a ruin. It is a thriving, modern metropolis that has never forgotten its classical roots. Sunlight reflects off the glass, bathing the stone in a warm, golden glow that softens the scale of the architecture. People move through the atrium, their voices echoing against the polished floors, blending the hum of a busy center with the quiet dignity of a temple. The narrator walks toward a central fountain, where water cascades over intricate carvings, moving with a rhythm that feels both ancient and engineered. There is no decay here, only an evolution that has refined the aesthetics of the past into the utility of the present. This city stands as the physical manifestation of the Republic's endurance. It is a synthesis of marble and light, a place where the weight of history provides the foundation for a soaring, sustainable future. Standing here, the reality of this world is undeniable. The vision is complete. The architecture itself tells the story of a civilization that chose to build rather than to break. crafting a reality that remains standing long after our own might have fallen. The narrator reaches out, touching the smooth surface of a marble pillar. The solid stone feels cold, real, and heavy against his palm. Yet, as he pulls his hand away, the air begins to shimmer. The city around him vibrates, losing its sharp edges, fading into a translucent glow. He stands now in the center of an unfolding diagram, a vast, glowing lattice of light that stretches toward infinity. Each strand represents a moment, a decision, a path taken or abandoned. He points to the sequence he just explored, a thin, brilliant thread that glows with the stability of a world that never fell. Beside it, millions of other strands flicker, some dark, some broken, some barely visible. The realization settles in with the weight of an anchor. Our own reality, the one we call history, is not a fixed monument. It is only one thread in this sprawling, infinite web. The foundation of our world, the wars we fought and the systems we built, were not inevitable outcomes of fate. They were the result of singular, quiet moments of human choice. Seeing this, the ground beneath the narrator seems to tilt. The permanence of our current existence dissolves, replaced by the staggering awareness that every second of our lives is a pivot point. We are living on the edge of a blade, walking a path that could have turned in 1,000 different directions. The narrator lowers his hand, and the glowing lattice of time begins to dim, the light retracting until only a faint pulse remains in the dark. He walks forward, the space around him narrowing until he is framed against a simple, neutral background. The grand scale of empires and alternate futures falls away, leaving only the immediate silence of the room. He looks directly into the lens, his expression steady, holding the weight of the inquiry. The question is no longer about Caesar, or the Republic, or the divergent paths of history. It is about you. Do you believe that the world is a fixed script written by the momentum of the past and the cold hands of destiny? Or do you see the truth hidden in the gaps? History is not a series of inevitable collisions. It is a fragile, unfolding sequence of individual choices made in the dark. Every action, every hesitation, and every decision you make today acts as a pivot point for the world that follows. You are not a spectator to a pre-written story. You are the architect of the next strand in the web. Think of the moments that define your day, your work, and your convictions. Are these merely echoes of what was, or are they the active creation of what will be? The power to shift the current is yours, and the weight of that responsibility is absolute. The narrator turns away from the camera, pacing slowly toward a desk overflowing with maps, journals, and fragmented records. He picks up a quill, turning it over in his fingers before setting it back down. This search for what might have been is not a destination. It is a constant, restless movement. Every time we peel back the layers of a settled event, we uncover the hidden complexity that once existed. We find the roads not taken and the voices that were silenced by the march of the victors. This is not merely an academic exercise. It is an act of reclaiming the potential of our own time. By questioning the rigidity of the past, we break the illusion that our present is the only possible reality. The work never truly concludes. New evidence emerges, old assumptions shatter, and the web of history expands with every discovery. We are detectives in a crime scene that spans millennia, piecing together the broken glass of what could have been. The investigation remains open because the past is never dead. It is merely waiting for someone to ask the right questions. To explore these alternative paths is to participate in an eternal endeavor, one that demands constant vigilance and a refusal to accept the surface of things as the whole truth. The journey continues, and there is always more to uncover in the margins of what we think we know. The investigation ends here, but the search continues. If you want to keep peeling back the layers of our reality and mapping the paths history failed to take. Join us. Subscribe to this channel. Become part of a collective of explorers who refuse to settle for the standard narrative. Every week, we break down new possibilities and challenge the foundations of the known world. Hit the button, turn on notifications, and let us build this archive together. The past is vast, and we have only just begun to chart its hidden territory. Stay curious, keep questioning, and we will see you in the next exploration. If you enjoyed our look into a world that could have been, check out the playlist for more interesting investigations. Subscribe to the channel and like the content. See you at the divergence point.